Hey everybody, it's Roland here from T Roland 73 on YouTube. Um, that's a video sharing website. That's youtube.com. Anyway, oh, there's the sun. Well, here we are in a world of 3 dimensions and 5 senses. Pretty basic stuff for us, right? Yeah, I'd say I got my head pretty well around the idea of up and down and left and right, things having depth. Then add into it the knowledge that I can interact with what is around me through tasting, touching, seeing, hearing, and smelling. Then there's the sixth sense that we hear about that's not really something, but is there if you want it to be. Yeah, I got it pretty well down. But let me pretend for a minute that I'm brand new here to the world. And it's all new to me, and anything could be anything. A table could be something I see as a low place to sit down and get shade. And a beach umbrella could be a place for me to catch rain, right? Then drink it. Something like that, where an object would have no meaning to me. No meaning than whatever I make it to be. So what would that world look like to me? Well, what would it look like to you? I think for me, it would take me a long time to figure out what shadows were all about. I mean, could you imagine the ground moving, but it's not really moving, and it moves a lot every time the wind blows the trees around? I think that would be really vertigo. I think I would feel a lot of vertigo. But they say that the instant that things like that happen, when you figure out a use for something, there's a connection in our head, a neuron web that forms. This happens with everything. That's why you hear about, like, people connecting love with, like, being ignored from their parents when they were a kid or something like that. Therapists eat that stuff up. So, we've all seen a neuron picture, right? It looks like a big web, big complex web of neurons inside our head. When I hear a whistle in the woods, my brain automatically creates the image of a bird, but more specifically like a bluebird compared to like a crow. You know, it's there for me to already know all that stuff. And talking about this reminds me of what the Buddhists say about every moment, it being infinite. Anything is possible at any moment. This is what they mean, right? In the book, The Power of Now, they even talk about it. And that was like a bestseller. Creating your reality kind of stuff. Manifesting. I've manifested some things. First thing I ever manifested was a winter coat. It took me 3 days to manifest that, because I put the intention out there to the universe, and I got a sweet, free coat. The last thing is the place I'm living in now. I find a lot of power and strength in nature, so I'm living in nature. And I manifested a sweet spot. You want to see it? Here, this is... pretty cool, huh? It needs to be worked on a little bit, but here it is. Oh, and right here, right there, that's all broccoli. Anyway, so I'm going to have broccoli soon. But yeah, manifesting things. That's something that I wasn't taught in American schools. But do we create our own reality? Well, I'm no expert. But from what I'm gathering in my studies and my practices, it sure is pointing that way. But not in a way that if I want money, I get money, it'll just appear right in my hand. No, it happens in a real way. So therefore, if I want money, what I'm manifesting is wanting money. I'll have bills, I'll have some kind of financial problem hovering over me. It's tricky in that way. Because we are so immersed in the 5 sense reality that we have to have something that like works for us. Since we weren't taught magic like this in the Western world, so those neurons are not connected very well, right? We live in a very right-brained, logical, functioning world where there's little about feeling and little about art and little about imagination. That's half of our brain. Anyway, I'm sure you've looked up left and right brain hemispheres. Where am I? So, we can strengthen them, right? We can even open our third eye if we intend to. All it takes is doing it, even a little. Like I do. Just a little bit. For now. So here we find ourselves in a world with the masses not knowing anything or very little about what we are talking about. Then there are these people who have an apt understanding about the five-sense reality and how our brains work and take things in. You know these people. They're in their little clubs and their little orders, and they all stick together. They're our rulers, basically. They stick together. You can tell because they're all related if you trace their names back and forth from this family to that. The royal family seems to pay a lot of attention to bloodlines and other little facts like that. The information's out there. And they seem to have a lust for power. We'll get to that later. But I think they have a lust for power, riches. I mean, the control speaks for themselves. I mean, look at the elite. It almost defines itself. But this apt understanding and control issue is something. If you want to see it or not, we are all swimming in it. It's deep waters we swim in every day when we're bombarded with the media, advertising, and someone else's opinions. How we act is very much learned by what we see in the world. And what do we see? Well, there's a lot of anger, violence, distrust, betrayal. It goes on and on and on. You can see it in airport security, you can see it on TV shows, you can see it on billboards. And it all boils down to fear. Growing up, I remember as a kid acting like Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future. I even had the skateboard. I went out and bought the identical skateboard that they used in the actual movie. Or if I was in a situation that resembled something I saw in a movie, I would, and maybe even slip into it now. I'd respond like what I saw on TV or in a movie. Is that healthy? Is that natural? All the companies that made these shows are owned by 6 major corporations. All the ideas and things were based on fear rather than love. Fear, always with the agenda of buying something too. Hey, you ever see the documentary Century for the Self? It's a 4-parter. It's talking about consumerism and how it came to be in the past 100 years. And it's all basically off of Freud's work. A guy named Edward Bernays. You might want to wiki him or something like that. He played a huge part in it. Anyway, you should check it out. For a while, I thought just knowing this stuff somehow made me immune to the flood of suggestions that were coming to me from the outside world. Perhaps it does help you to see our impulses and where they come from. The thirst for Coke on a sunny afternoon, but never using Coke as an ingredient to get corrosion off of your battery, for example. But it still gets in there. It gets in our brains. That's how our brains were wired. And the movie makers and media owners know this very well. And we should know this too. Somehow we might be able to navigate through it. When I talk about this, I feel like I'm living in some Orwellian nightmare. When I go to town once in a while and see all the stimuli put in place, I feel like the world has gone awry. It's just gone crazy. Led down some sheep trail that heads directly to the mall with shiny lights. But we have to take responsibility for that thought, because that too is a manifestation. And that too is the agenda that the media holds. Sure, there's plenty of suggestions out there for me to follow. even along the lines of fighting the New World Order. Alex Jones will certainly have something to say to me for that, about that. I'm even freer than that. From what I'm reading, all those bad thoughts are adding to the New World Order. All that distrust and paranoia, it all adds to it. And all I have to do is sort of wish it away, right? Well, that's hard to do when you look up in the sky and see chemtrails and unnatural clouds. See them falling to the ground, and I know that I'm breathing them in. Do you know that a plane was grounded in India for spraying chemtrails? It's pretty interesting. I didn't research it too much, but I think the pilot was arrested for crimes of pollution or something. Anyway, so can we create our own reality? Can we all just kind of ignore the agendas that are put in place around us? If we can, I think a good place to start would be to stop shopping. If nobody's there to read the ads, then there's no ads, right? I can tell you, on a good day, when my head's clear and I'm not worried and I'm not living in this Orwellian world, I don't really see chemtrails too much. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the encouragement about my new little project making videos here. And leave some comments. Let me know what you think. Alright.